Okay, let's dive right into this explainer with a chilling story that perfectly sets the stage for our journey today. Picture this. Deep in the Aravalli Hills of Rajasthan, India, sits the ancient, sprawling Bangar Fort. Local legend tells of three friends who, just decided to completely ignore all the warnings and sneak into this ruin after dark. They'd heard the rumors, the ones that say anyone who stays the night never comes back alive, but they just brushed them off as mere campfire stories. So, armed with nothing but a flashlight, they step into this heavy, suffocating darkness. Suddenly, one of the friends slips and falls deep into an old dry well. The other two frantically manage to pull him out and rush him to their car to find a hospital. But before they could even make it, their car violently crashes. All three died right there on the spot. And locals will tell you, without a single shadow of a doubt, that this was no accident. It was the curse of Bangar collecting its dues.
I mean, it's not every day you see a legitimate government agency putting up signs that feel like they belong straight in a horror movie, right? But as you approach the main gate of Bangar, you were greeted by this very real, very official warning board placed by the Archaeological Survey of India. It states, in absolutely no uncertain terms, that entering before sunrise and after sunset is strictly prohibited. This single, rusted sign has basically cemented Bangar's reputation as a place of true, undeniable peril. It officially validates the fears of tourists who flock there by the millions, but who always make sure to get out before dusk.
All right, let's get into Section 1. The Curses of Bangar. So, to really understand the sheer terror surrounding this place, we have to look at how this once thriving metropolis of literally 9,000 homes became an absolute ghost town. The first major legend claims the land originally belonged to an ascetic named Baba Balu Nath. When King Madho Singh decided to build his grand city there, he asked the holy man for permission. The ascetic agreed, but on one very strict condition. The shadow of the king's massive palace must never, ever fall upon his humble dwelling. If it did, the city would be destroyed. Initially, the palace was kept to a safe 4 stories, but later down the line, a descendant named Ajab Singh arrogantly raised the palace to 7 stories. The shadow fell. The sacred promise was broken, and according to the myth, the entire city was instantly doomed to ruin.
But wait, there is a second, even darker legend. This one surrounds Princess Ratnavati, who is known all throughout Rajputana for her immense beauty, and a dark magic practitioner named Tantric Singhia. Knowing the princess would absolutely never accept him, the Tantric enchanted a bottle of perfume she was buying in the local market, turning it into a dark, twisted love potion. But the princess was clever. She saw right through his trick and smashed the bottle against a large boulder, while the dark magic transferred straight into the stone, causing it to roll over and crush the Tantric. But right before he took his last breath, he unleashed a horrifying curse. Total destruction of the fort, 0 survivors, and absolute denial of reincarnation for anyone who perished there.
And these intense historical curses heavily fuel the modern-day reports we hear all the time. Tourists and locals are constantly reporting hearing women crying, the eerie shattering of glass bangles, or desperate screams for help echoing through the ruins. There are countless tales of unexplainable vehicle failures, kind of like the famous story of a journalist whose scooter mysteriously just died right outside the fort's entrance. While she was stranded, a complete stranger walked up, started the scooter with a single touch, and chillingly whispered to her, "They want you." It's wild. These are exactly the kinds of stories that have crowned Bangar as Asia's most haunted place.
Okay, so we've got the spooky stories, but we really have to ask, is any of this actually true? Let's dive into the actual evidence and see if this officially haunted site stands up to real historical and scientific scrutiny. Are the tormented souls of a cursed princess and an evil tantric really wandering around these ruins, or is our brain just playing a massive trick on us?
Which brings us perfectly to Section 2, the science of fear.
Let's look at the science and see how it builds a completely different, yet honestly entirely fascinating picture of what is actually happening out there. Because the absolute historical twist here, Princess Ratnavati, Tantric Singhia, and even the ascetic Baba Balu Nath likely never even existed. There are literally 0 verified historical records, no contemporary documents, and no inscriptions proving their existence anywhere. These stories are pure folklore, passed down from generation to generation, getting just a little more dramatic with every single retelling. But hold on, if the ghosts aren't real, why do so many incredibly normal, rational people genuinely experience pure, unadulterated terror when they visit?
Well, the answer lies in physics, specifically something called infrasound. Back in the 1980s, there was an engineer named Vic Tandy working in his lab when he suddenly just felt terrified. He started sweating, the hair on the back of his neck stood up, and he actually saw a gray, shadowy figure out of his peripheral vision. He totally thought he had seen a ghost. But the very next day, he realized a newly installed extractor fan was emitting a 19 Hz sound wave. This is infrasound. It's a sound way below human hearing, but one that your body literally feels as physical vibrations. It causes dizziness, serious anxiety, and a profound sense of dread. Now think about Bangar. It's nestled right in the Aravalli Hills, which is a seismic zone 4. Those minor earth movements, combined with the wind howling through hundreds of roofless stone structures, naturally generate massive amounts of infrasound. It's literally tricking your body into a physiological state of paranormal panic.
But physics is really only half the story here. The rest is the sheer power of the human mind. In 2008, Goldsmiths University in London ran this fascinating thing called the Haunt Project. They put 79 people in a completely blank, boring room and secretly pumped in infrasound and electromagnetic fields. But here is the real kicker. They simply suggested to the participants beforehand that they might experience something a little weird. The result? Over 20% felt a ghostly presence and 8% felt absolute terror. When researchers analyzed the data, they found that suggestibility was the single biggest factor. If you tell a tourist they are walking into India's most haunted fort, their highly suggestible brain is going to practically invent a supernatural encounter out of thin air.
Now, combine that extreme suggestibility with a quirky psychological phenomenon called pareidolia. This is basically an evolutionary trait where our brains are hardwired to look for familiar patterns, specifically human faces and figures, even in completely random, chaotic shapes. It's the exact reason why people see a face on Mars or shapes in fluffy clouds. So in Bangar, when you are already physically scared from the infrasound and primed by the ghost stories, your brain looks at the dark, jagged shadows of ruined pillars and broken walls, and automatically morphs them into the ghostly figure of a cursed princess or a wicked sorcerer.
Moving right along to Section 3, the true historical ruin. So, now that we've essentially debunked the ghosts, we're still left with a very real physical mystery. Look at those sprawling ruins. Why did an incredibly wealthy, magnificent city of 9,000 homes actually turn into a completely roofless ghost town? Well, if we look at the actual historical records, the timeline shows a much more grounded, though tragic, reality. Founded in 1573, Bangar was a major bustling hub. But over time, political power started shifting. By 1720, it was conquered by Sawai Jai Singh, the founder of Jaipur, which reduced Bangar to just a secondary, neglected town. But the final, absolute fatal blow didn't come from a war, and it certainly didn't come from a curse. It came in the year 1783.
While the myth boldly claims the city was destroyed overnight by black magic, the grim reality is that in 1783, a devastating El Niño event caused what's known as the Chalasa famine. Guys, this wasn't just some minor drought, it was a catastrophic famine that literally wiped out half to 2/3 of the population in some regions of North India. Survival in a rocky, dry area like Bangar became physically impossible. Those 9,000 families weren't killed by a tantric's curse. They packed up whatever they could physically carry and fled their homes simply to survive, leaving their once magnificent city to silently decay into the roofless ruins we see today.
This brings us to our final part, Section 4, the real nighttime dangers. Okay, so if the ghosts are just a mix of infrasound, psychological suggestibility, and a severe historical drought, why on earth does the government still strictly ban entry at night? Well, because the physical danger at Bangar is incredibly real. It just happens to have claws and teeth instead of curses. The fort sits just 50 kilometers away from the massive Sariska Tiger Reserve, which is an 866 square kilometer wildlife sanctuary. The ruins of Bangar are literally surrounded by dense, untamed wilderness.
And this perfectly explains the auditory illusions that terrify so many visitors. Those spine-chilling shrieks echoing in the dark, they aren't tortured souls. They are the actual highly disturbing calls of wild hyenas, which sound terrifyingly similar to a human laughing or crying. The rustling shadows moving in the trees, just troops of local monkeys. And the very real threat of encountering a roaming Bengal tiger or a hunting leopard in the pitch black, among unstable, crumbling ruins, is the exact reason the ASI put up that warning board. It's an administrative safety notice against apex predators, not a warning about ghosts. So why does the haunted myth persist so stubbornly today? First off, human psychology just loves a good story. As author Anuradha Goyal points out, when the real history of a ruin is forgotten, we humans inevitably invent mysteries to fill the void. A villainous sorcerer cursing a magnificent city is an exciting, deeply memorable narrative. A severe drought? Well, that's just a depressing historical fact. Second, the entire local economy absolutely depends on the millions of tourists who come seeking a paranormal thrill. And finally, social media virality totally rewards spooky, unexplainable experiences. Let's be real, no one goes viral on the internet for pointing out that the ghost they heard was actually just a hyena.
Ultimately, understanding the science, the real history, and the psychology behind Bangar completely disarms the fear. It transforms a terrifying ghost story into a fascinating lesson on how our human minds interact with both history and nature. Which leaves us with a rather profound question to ponder today. What other terrifying legends in our world are just waiting to be illuminated by the truth? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.